little girl.
They have yet to fix us. But that's why we're here. I know I'm not alone. I know I can get help if I ask.
Welcome to On the Red Carpet, where we put game developers on the red carpet and give them the spotlight on their game. And today we have with us Erin Reynolds from Flying Mollusk.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm flattered to be here and really excited to chat with you guys.
Oh man, I'm so excited to get you on the show finally. I know we had talked a while back about setting something up, but you know, I've been really trying to find developers to come on that have very interesting projects. And you know, one of the things about any developers is, besides making unique titles, is that you guys like to take risk in everything that you do. What a lot of people don't know about NeverMind is the way it's designed and the way it's developed and how it works. So tell us, how'd you come up with the idea for NeverMind and what inspired you to create such a game?
Yeah, I started working on NeverMind as my master's thesis project in graduate school at USC. For your final year there, in the MFA program I was in, which was the Interactive Media and Games Division of the Cinema School, that's a mouthful. You have a full year to work on any game project really that you want, and the basically the crazier the better. And so I went into it thinking, you know, what can I accomplish this year that I wouldn't really be able to make out, you know, in the real world? And you know, I went into it wanting to work on a biofeedback oriented game, since that was a technology I'd worked with a little bit in the past, but it wasn't quite ready when I worked with it a couple of years prior to that. So I wanted to give it another shot. I knew I wanted to make a game that gave back to the players. One thing that I had been really interested in, well, still I'm interested in, is games that are really fun and entertaining and feel just like any other game that, you know, you would play in you know, in a mainstream context, but also gives back at the same time.
Right.
So the example I like to use is like Dance Dance Revolution, for example, where it's this really fun, zany kind of game in its own right, but you can also get a really good workout from it too. And so I think there's a lot of potential there, and I really wanted to, you know, focus on that. And then finally, I'd always wanted to work on a horror game because it's just an aesthetic I've always loved, but I had never really had the opportunity to work on. I worked in the industry for a few years prior to going into graduate school. And I actually worked at Disney, which I loved. I loved working there, but not so many opportunities to work on horror games.
No, not at all. I wouldn't think.
So I really wanted to take this as an opportunity to try that. And so all those things came together to become what NeverMind eventually evolved into. And so for that year, I had a team of students from across the school, from the engineering school and the cinema school and the music school, and we all worked together to create this proof of concept and really get it working in the way that we all wanted it to work. And then, from there, it sort of just evolved into, where it is now, where it's out in the real world and doing crazy things.
Wow. That's a crazy story. I mean, not crazy in the sense that, it's, I guess you could say crazy, but it's crazy because of how it started and where it is today. You have people who make things that kind of start out one way and completely goes a different way, or it doesn't do anything at all. It just becomes a final project and people move on to create something different. But it seems that you've been able to take this small project that you initially had started, be able to inspire other people to join you in your endeavor and actually start to work on something that I think is very special.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
No problem. You're welcome. And it's funny because I talk a lot about Kinect. I remember early on, I talked a lot about Kinect. And the thing that I was talking about, and not just Kinect, but just like even, I guess you could say anything that has to deal with motion control or reading of the pulse or anything in that matter. The thing about the Kinect for the Xbox that I didn't like, that no one utilized, was the other features to it. Everyone always focused on the movement of the hands and the body and the facial, but I'm saying to myself, this thing at one point was highly touted about its sound capability, about the fact that it can read your pulse, it can see your body temperature. No one has ever thought of making a game like that. And that's the reason why I remember your game, because I remember about the whole biofeedback thing. So I want you to give the listeners out there, I guess you could say, explain to them what biofeedback is and how it works in your game.
Yeah. Biofeedback I think is very cool. I'm maybe biased, but I love geeking out about it because it's an incredible capability that we now, as developers and everyday people, have really great access to just in the past few years. And so basically biofeedback at a high level is really any system that can read sort of basically subconscious signals that your body outputs and interprets it and then presents it back to you in some way, shape, or form. So, that can be anything from, at a very high level, just, if you have a heart rate monitor, like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or something like that, seeing your heart rate and, seeing the display kind of change depending on, how good of a workout you're doing or whatever the case may be. In our case, biofeedback is used in NeverMind to affect the gameplay we listen to how scared or stressed or anxious the player might be feeling at any given moment while playing this intense thriller game. And as the player gets more scared and stressed, the game responds by becoming more difficult. So we use it as sort of a stress management tool in a way where you have to learn to be really mindful of those feelings of stress and tension as you're kind of going through these really dark, uncomfortable, intense situations, and learn how to calm down on the fly because, the game can get quite challenging if you get really freaked out, but if you calm down, the game will become easier. So it's sort of the way we look at it is by playing NeverMind, you become not only more mindful of those subtle subconscious signals, whether it's, a tightness in the pit of your stomach, or you start clenching your teeth, or, you kind of start to feel tense in the back of your neck, and then learning how to best relieve those feelings. Is it, taking deep breaths? Is it thinking about the ocean? Is it looking at cat photos? Whatever works best for you.
Right.
And you can use the same skills in real life. And so, we use two different types of biofeedback. One is physiological, which is heart rate based. So NeverMind can work with a variety of just off the shelf heart rate sensors that
Nice.
hopefully people already have. Or we use emotional biofeedback, which can actually use any webcam at all. And with that, it can look at, changes in your facial features. This is through this amazing technology called Aftex technology that's developed by this group called Affectiva. And it's very sensitive. It can read, potential feelings of stress and fear just by subtle fluctuations and how your facial features might move. And so the game can respond with that too. Or you can combine the heart rate and the emotional feedback, and then it's like super powered. But it's really an amazing time now because this type of technology is so readily available. When we first started NeverMind back in 2011, our options were still pretty limited. It was just basically hacking together something that got heart rate. But
Right.
now, it seems like everyone has either like a wearable that can detect heart rate or, again, this Aftex technology that can read emotion through webcams is really cool. As you mentioned, the Kinect has this capability. Intel has some really great technology through the RealSense tech. It's all here now. It's just a matter of crazy indie developers or really any developers to figure out what to do with this incredible technology and really kind of take it to the next step.
It's funny because it's like, I think the greatest thing about video games is the immersiveness of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we feel immersed, the better the game is. And I think what early on motion controls try to do was make you feel like you were a part of the game, but it just felt gimmicky and sloppy. But now you have this thing where it's like it's using your heart rate, it's using your facial expressions. You have so many developers trying to capture the emotions of a person outside of the game and have the game recognize those emotions to a great effect in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very special. It's scary because it's like you don't know if it's going to work. It's like people are
Right.
always nervous about it. That's one of the downsides to,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say, things like the PSI camera or the
Mm-hmm.
the Xbox Kinect and things like that. People are wary of it and things, and a lot of people kind of shy away from it. But I think people like you, people like the guys over at what is the name? I can't remember. The guys over who are making Pisces. I can't remember the name of the game. I literally just did a whole show with them. I can't remember the name right now, but they're making a really great game called Pisces that's doing something similar with the Kinect, except yours is doing it to me a little bit better because you're using the pulse rate on the biofeedback of heart rates, which to me, when it comes to horror games, is exactly what you want to use. Because first of all, I'm telling you right now, and I'm really impressed with your game and I'm excited for it, but I probably won't get it because
Sure.
I don't play any horror games. Literally, I don't have a horror game in my library, and my palms get so sweaty when I play these games, and I get so intense. Like I can watch a horror film, but I can't play them. It's because I'm just in it. When you're in it, it's like you don't want to die. You don't know what's popping out.
Yep.
Yeah. So
It's
I'm
intense.
I didn't even want Oculus Rift in my library. A friend of mine had Oculus Rift, like the image in my library. I just deleted it because I just didn't want it. Not Oculus Rift. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Outlast. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay.
I said Oculus Rift. Yeah, they had Outlast in my library, and I just deleted it because I just didn't want to see the Outlast image in my library. So
Yeah.
it was pretty crazy. Anchor, you have
I
anything?
can completely understand
Oh,
that.
I love a good horror game. I've really developed a passion for them recently. I was just like Cal earlier, where I did not play horror games. Outlast is as far as I can go, but I like a good sense of dread. I like a good sense of suspense, and I really enjoy that kind of aspect. So I plan on picking up the game.
Oh, good.
That's gonna be
Glad
great.
to hear that. Well, it's so interesting because horror games are such an interesting genre to be playing and to be working in because it really there's a diversity of what that can mean. In fact, we've actually started to shy away from calling NeverMind a horror game, even though it definitely has horror elements to it. But I think a lot of people that hear horror game, they think, jump scares, or they think like, lots of gore, or they think it's really intense, like an action game that's, intentionally incredibly punishing. And that's certainly, there's a lot of great games in that end of the spectrum. But then, there's games like Nevermind, or like, just more like creepy games, in some ways, even like a game like Gone Home, which is very, very tension building, it's or it's oh gosh, I'm trying to think of the game, and now it's not coming to mind. Total brain fart. It'll come to me like at some point after the podcast. But there's like a lot of really other games that are more atmospheric and horror and that sense, and it's they're so different that it's a challenge, but it's also a really interesting thing to observe as well. Because when you say horror game, it can mean completely different things.
Yeah.
And it's too bad, because I think a lot of people actually sort of stray away from the genre because they have one thing in mind, whereas they might be missing out on some really great games that maybe aren't as intense, or maybe are, more intense, depending on what they want. So I almost wonder if at some point there'll be a fractioning of definition within the horror genre to kind of separate it out. Well, we'll see, but it's a fun genre. There's a little bit of everything in it, which is pretty great.
I think there should be.
Cal touched on this a little bit earlier. It's one of the things about what makes video games much better for the horror genre, because people have that expectation, thanks to horror movies, about jump scares, because that's really the only way they can really scare anybody anymore. It has to be something unexpected popping in front of your face. But with horror games, it's because everyone always says in a horror movie, I wouldn't do that. Or, I wouldn't. Why are you opening the door? Just get out of the house. Leave. Why are you looking for it? It's like everyone says that position, but a horror game puts you in that scenario where you have to be the one making the choice. And something about that makes it even worse for other people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, super intense. And now, like, you bring it to VR, you mentioned Oculus Rift, and then it's just like, now you're actually in it. You're the one who's running down to the basement and like making those stupid decisions. And, you have to, face the consequences in full immerse 3D.
I think they'll have, they definitely should have different classes of the genre, of the horror genre, or the, because you have survival horror. You have, which is what most horror games are based around, survivability. Right. But I think yours seem more like a psychological thriller, which can be scary in itself. What have you, what does the story focus around? And, is there a main character? What is the dialogue about? How is the game developed? What is the main focus of Nevermind?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the story actually revolves around psychological trauma and PTSD. You play as a neuroprober, which is sort of like a psychologist of the not too distant future, who can actually go inside the subconscious mind of psychological trauma and PTSD patients. So people who experience something, awful at some point in their life, and it was so terrible to deal with that their conscious mind just couldn't reconcile the memory of it. And so they've repressed the memory and locked it deep, deep away in the subconscious mind. So now the individual can't remember what happened to them, or in some cases, they don't remember that anything happened to them at all. And yet this repressed memory is still kind of festering deep inside the subconscious mind and creating this havoc in their life. And this is actually based on what can happen to people in the real world if they face a traumatic experience. So as a neuroprober, you have to go inside the subconscious mind and sleuth out what this forgotten memory is. So in some ways, it's a mystery game in many ways, where you are looking at every single element of the world of the subconscious mind, whether it's the objects in it, or the artistic style, or the music, or even the biofeedback reactions that happen in the game. Everything's a clue as to what this traumatic event was. And while you're exploring, you're collecting these photographs that represent sort of concrete memory moments. And there's 10 of them that are hidden behind puzzles or just hidden throughout the world. And when you collect all 10, you have to figure out which 5 tell the story of the trauma, and you have to put them in the right order to recreate the memory. And 5 of them are red herrings. And then once you reconstruct them, then you sort of kind of uncover the forgotten memory, and then the patient whose mind you're inside of can now start to reconcile with the memory and work through it and start the path towards recovery now that they recall what happened to them. So it's very, each level is very, very different. It's a whole world in and of itself, because it's a different person, it's a different traumatic event. You really are just trying to help these patients that come to you and need your help to uncover that memory. So, in some ways, in many ways, one of our goals with NeverMind was not only to build this sort of stress management tool, but also to tell the stories of trauma, psychological trauma and PTSD, and really kind of help bring awareness to the fact that this is something that is a lot broader than I think a lot of people realize. People hear PTSD and they think of battlefield PTSD or sexual assault, which are, of course, really serious areas that need attention, but it's much broader than that. Trauma can affect anyone, and I think a lot more people are wrestling with traumatic experiences. And so really we want to kind of tell those stories and show the diversity of it to kind of help bring more of an understanding to it and hopefully destigmatize it a little bit as well. Wow.
That's a very interesting concept. I'm actually interested in playing the game. Even if it does scare me. I mean, that's deep, just understanding how the game may play out and the setting that it's in. I think the thing that gets me and some people with like the horror game is the survival aspect. Mm-hmm. You're limited in what you have to survive in the first place, but I like a mystery. I like mm-hmm. a game where you have to go discover the problem and try to solve it. And in the process, it can become a thriller, and it can increase a lot of things going on in your own mind because you're trying to figure things out before something bad happens. So that's very interesting. I think a lot of people will like this, and it's completely different from anything that's out there right now. So mm-hmm. that is definitely a unique space. Anchor, you have any questions?
All I have to say is, what made you think of this? as a story-wise, like thematically, what made this come to mind? Was it just coming together with like, oh, we have the biopic sensor, and this is just a natural thing that came to mind, or was there inspiration behind it?
Yeah, it actually, the narrative itself was sort of evolved. I had this one of the advisors on my thesis when NeverMind was still a student project is this amazing woman who has this incredible knowledge of games and media art and also behavioral health. And she was actually my thesis chair. And so I was telling her what I wanted to achieve with the game, and I wasn't really sure what the story would be about. And she was the one who suggested trauma. She's like, well, this is something that can she explained to me like how psychological trauma can affect people, and maybe this is an area that might lend itself to the narrative of the game. And the more I read about it, I spent that whole summer, like the summer of 2011, just completely immersed in white papers and books and just trying to absorb as much as I could about that area. It all kind of came together. It made so much sense, and it's really been a privilege to be able to kind of take some of the stories and the concepts that have come out of those white papers and those interviews with psychologists and that research and bring it to a format that's a little bit more accessible and digestible for a lot of people and kind of present that data through the game.
Nice. Now, recently, GDC just passed. You were just there. We've seen a lot of things that happen at GDC. Such a great place for developers to meet, communicate with each other, learn about each other's technology and games and things like that. But I know recently you had stated that you had made some improvements or some technological things that have been added to the game. What have you changed about NeverMind recently, shall I say?
Yeah, so we've had some really exciting updates in just the past month, right before GDC, and one is the addition of the emotion sensing through the Afdex technology. So in the past, one of the big barriers to entry for a lot of people is they want to play NeverMind with the biofeedback, but they don't happen to own one of the heart rate sensors that we support. And even though you can play NeverMind without any sensors, and it's just more of a traditional game, a lot of people want to experience that sensitivity that the game offers. And so Now being able to give people access to that just through any standard webcam, it just opens it up. And so we're really excited about it because now people can really play the full experience as it was intended, a lot more easily. More than that, I think there's just emotion sensing in general. This is something that we've always been interested in, but it hasn't really been fully accessible until very recently. I think it just opens up so many doors to so many other types of games that like we're just super excited that this new toy is available to us as developers. So that was one, and the other one is eye tracking. So we've recently integrated the Tobii, Tobii, IX controller, which is this really powerful and really sensitive eye tracking controller device. And so if you play with that, you can now move and control and interact with NeverMind using your eye movement, which at first when I heard about it, I was a little skeptical. Like, I think it's cool, but like I was like, well, I don't really know how that's going to fit in NeverMind, and we'll play with it. But I have to say, it's actually very, it's one of those things you just have to kind of experience it to believe it. So there's things where, like, if you look towards the edge of the screen, the camera will just kind of move that way. So it feels much more natural way of kind of, surveying the landscape.
Nice.
We have some specific moments where we have like additional creepy moments that use it. My favorite, I don't want to spoil too much, but one of my favorites is there's this area where there's a bunch of doll heads in a spider web. Oh, and if you look at any doll head, the eyes will open and then look right back at you. It's amazing. It's so great. It's like, and I love moments like that because, I've been working on this game for like 4 years. And so I don't really get scared by it very easily at this point, but that new feature, that still creeps me out. So I love it.
That's intense.
So we're really excited about that new way of interacting with the game, both through the emotion and biofeedback and the eye tracking.
Wow, that sounds great. This game is it sounds awesome. It really sounds awesome. Like, the more you talk about it, the more I hear about it, the more I'm excited about the game and its potential. What technology have you used to develop the game? I know a lot of people use Unity. And also I wanted to ask, for a game that's designed like this, the soundtrack, does the soundtrack set the mood? Is there any music in the game to like, kind of like, how like when certain things are about to happen, the music kind of gets intense or it dies down super quiet to catch you? Do you get that feeling in NeverMind?
Oh, absolutely. Well, to answer your first question really quickly, we developed it in Unity, which is great because it kind of gave us the flexibility to tinker away with all the biofeedback sensors, which originally was just us kind of hacking away, and also gave us the ability to bring it to lots of different platforms like Windows and Mac and soon Xbox and Oculus and all that. But the soundtrack is so important to the game. If I had to choose between having no visuals or no music, I would pick no visuals, hands down. It's so important to a game like this, and especially with NeverMind. We have an incredible audio director who was with the game from the very beginning when it was still a student project. He was actually a student at USC at the time, and has since graduated and going on to do amazing things. But so he's been with the game from the very beginning, and he has just been able to really bring a whole new dimension to the game through the music, through the sound effects, and even with the biofeedback. There's a whole opportunity to have dynamic music that responds to those subconscious indications of stress and fear. And so, for example, there's this one area that the more scared you get, the more intense the music becomes. And that's actually the hardest area for me to play because every time it still like stresses me out when I play, when the music starts like blaring and the drums are going and it's really intense. Like, that just gets my heart rate like instantly up. And so I'm still learning how to manage my stress in that particular part of the game.
Wow.
But yeah, it's so important, and he's so talented, and really, it's in many ways that the music is 60% of the experience, and so I feel very fortunate that I was able to work with him. And he's not the only person who did the sound and the music. We had some other composers we worked with as well who were amazing back in the student projects, and it's never underestimate the power of audio in any game, really, because it can really completely change the experience for the better.
It does. A lot of people don't realize how important music is in any medium. Honestly, movies, TV, when you have great audio, it really makes whatever you're watching or whatever you're doing just even more immersive, and it sets a mood.
It does.
It really sets a mood, and if you get some really creepy music and you're in a creepy situation, it just makes that situation even more dire. So,
yep.
That sounds amazing. I know a lot of people out there are really going to be looking out for this game, because this genre, or this generation, shall I say, there hasn't been many horror games. There are, or psychological thrillers for that matter. There have been a few here and there, but nothing that has really stood out amongst the crowd compared to like last generation. There was such an abundance. Everyone has gone first person shooter or bust.
Yeah.
And you guys bring these unique titles to the forefront using new technology, utilizing technology that hasn't been utilized. I think it's great. I really do think it's great.
You.
I can remember back in 2012 and 2013 sitting around with a bunch of my friends in a party chat. We were like, you know what, this, like the Kinect in particular, felt like this unused thing that was just kind of thrown around for motion controls or maybe the occasional voice command. And we were saying, this would be so cool if someone used like the infrared camera or some aspect of the Kinect to make a horror game. And I'm just so glad someone actually did that.
Yeah,
I thought of it before I did.
Yep. It's funny. I'm telling you, we sat there and we spoke about how the Kinect should be utilized. And I just remember saying to myself, man, could you imagine being in a room where you can't say anything? Any little noise? Like, imagine walking through a room of like sleeping creatures and you can't make a peep. And somebody comes in and says something and everyone wakes up. Like, no one has thought about that or thought of a way to utilize that in any way. And it was the same thing. I said, I could imagine if Capcom was to somehow use this Kinect, where it was like maybe you walked into a room and your heart rate was very, very low, hovering around 88, 90 or something like that. And you come out the door and all of a sudden there's a billion zombies in the hallway and it just shoots up because it's such an intense moment. I'm really excited that you were able to utilize this in a way that is kind of similar to what we have been talking about for years, So hopefully this all works out the way you had planned it, and a lot of people recognize that this sounds like it's going to be an amazing experience. Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Erin?
Yeah.
Okay. So, how has it been? Have you had the opportunity to work with the Idea Xbox program yet?
Yeah. So we've been working with them for a while, and they're great. It's it's very encouraging that large companies like Microsoft are taking care of their indies, and they have a division that's dedicated to really helping indies sort of realize their crazy dreams. And so we've been very fortunate to be working with the Idea Xbox program for a while now.
Mm-hmm. Has the experience, been good for you? Because, every once in a while, and at least early on, you always heard about how difficult it was as an indie developer to get your game out, period, because it costs so much. You have to get it, processed, and it has to be approved, and all these things take time, all these things take money. Did you have an easier time, or was it just as difficult as anybody else?
I started indie development with, Flying Mollusk and making NeverMind just in the last 3 years or so. So, it's hard to kind of compare it to, back in the olden days. But I do have to say that it's been great. I think, programs like the Idea Xbox program really show that people are taking indies seriously, and they understand how hard it is to get your games out there. And so, it's been a great process, and they've been very supportive. And, I think based on the stories I've heard, it's a lot easier now. It's, and they have a tough job because, you don't want to, you want to make sure that you filter things so that you are supporting great experiences for the players. You're not letting kind of half-assed games out there,
right.
but you also want to support the crazy ideas too. And so, I have a lot of respect for them. It's a very tough job to kind of, always be sort of filtering through that. But I think they've done a great job so far.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. Now, will you be attending E3 this year?
Oh, yes. In fact, actually, so we're based in Los Angeles, so E3 is actually just right down the road from us, so It's very easy. Yeah, I love it.
That's awesome. Do you think you'll be able to have the game on the showroom floor?
I hope so. We'll see. It's if we have the opportunity to show it, we definitely will. But we don't know any details about that either way yet. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and hopefully it'll be out there in a few months.
Awesome. Well, Erin, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Before I finish up, I just have one more question. Edgar, do you have anything to say before we head out?
Oh no, I'm more than pleased with the answers we've been given.
That's what I like to hear.
That's awesome. When do you think you'll be able to? I guess you could say, when do you think you'll be able to pick up more work on the Xbox version? And do you have a timetable of when you think we'll be able to see it hit the Xbox One?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it because I was going to make sure that we didn't leave the conversation before I mentioned that. So, the Xbox version is something that, we're really excited about and we feel terrible that it's taken as long as it has to get it out there. Mm-hmm. The actual, the game is totally playable on Xbox right now. It's been playable for many, many, many months. So the part that's really taking time is just is the biofeedback, because it is such a new feature that no other games have really pursued. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of there's a lot of tinkering and exploration and R&D that's going into it. And so it's taking longer than any of us anticipated that it would. But it's our main focus, or one of our main focuses, and it's something that we're working on every day. So, we're hoping that it'll be, within months. We're still targeting this spring to release it.
Okay.
Yeah. So soon, as soon as we possibly can, it'll be out there, and we're making great progress every day. But again, one of these things is it's so new to even bring biofeedback to a console in general,
right,
that it's been definitely an adventure trying to get it working. But again, ID at Xbox has been really supportive, and we've making great progress, and we hope to be able to announce more details about when to expect it in the coming weeks. Fingers crossed.
Well, that's a lot better. I was imagining this thing was coming out like winter, or at least next year or something. But that's a lot closer than I was expecting. So that's great to hear and great to know.
Yeah, and one thing, if it looks like it is going to take until winter to get the biofeedback version, then what we probably will do is at least get the non-biofeedback version out there, so that it, people can start playing it, and then, update if we have to. But we're hopeful that we'll be able to figure something out soon.
I want you to take as much time as you need to make this game the game that you want. Listen, if the guys at Remedy and the guys at Naughty Dog can delay games, you can delay a game too.
I appreciate that.
I want this game to be perfect because this is a unique title. I don't want people to pass it over. I really want this type of game to be a success on the Xbox One, and I'm very glad that you are taking the risk to put something unique and new out there that a lot of fans think is going to be completely different. Probably will blow a lot of minds, and I really hope that other developers take inspiration from it. I mean, I don't want to fluff it. You know what I'm saying? But I'm really I'm impressed. I really am impressed with what you're doing with this game. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clear, and I hope that there's people out there that once this game is released and they get to see what it's all about, they'll take inspiration and use the Kinect in a way that it should be used, because it's completely forgotten.
Yeah, and that's sort of our goal too, is that we really want to show other developers that this can be done, this should be done, and there's so much untapped potential in the Kinect in general. There's so many features that I think are just waiting to be turned into amazing games, that we really want to do whatever small part we can play in helping to remind people that this is an incredible piece of technology. Don't squander the opportunity to do cool things with it. We'll do what it takes to try to help remind people that it's there.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you again, Erin, for coming on the show and giving us the opportunity to chat with you about NeverMind. I wish you and your Flying Mullets team nothing but success, and hope to see your game released this spring.
Thank you very much. This is wonderful time. It's great chatting with you guys, and I'll keep you posted for sure.
Thank you.